According to Mitsubishi, it is the Australian government's fault that we, a Japanese company with global sales, aren't selling any of the electric cars that we don't actually make. I'm really confused. Did the general manager here, did he just have a really bad day? What exactly does he hope to accomplish with these incredible comments that he's just made? He manages to blame shift, contradict himself, and whinge and whine all in one convoluted statement that was just a giant embarrassment. This was the most insane, amusing, entertaining, and bizarre interview I have ever seen. The comments coming from the general manager of Mitsubishi are truly staggering in their inaccuracy, in their falsehoods, and in their accusations. Accusing people of doing things that they aren't doing, making statements that are clearly, truly insane. Mitsubishi has come out firing. Now, Mitsubishi has actually just officially left China. It's given up on its factories there. It had engine factories, car factories. It's walked away. That's official as of yesterday. But at the same time, they've blamed the Australian government for weak EV demand, even though they don't even sell any EVs. Mitsubishi says it has electric cars up its sleeves. It's got plenty if Australians wanted them, but inadequate Australian charging infrastructure is what's led it to decide that Australians don't want electric cars. They only want hybrids. That's in spite of the fact that 10% of all cars sold in Australia are fully electric. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans, and I predicted the demise of Mitsubishi, Mazda, Nissan, and probably Subaru as well. Those four car companies within 10 years will no longer cease to exist in the form that they're in today. And I don't think that's when I first said that 4 years ago, everyone said I was a maniac. I don't think anyone would be all that shocked to hear anyone say that today. Mitsubishi has long prioritized making plug-in hybrids over purely electric cars in Australia, but it says it would sell more EVs here if the country's charging infrastructure was up to scratch. Guys, I don't know about you, but I personally have never had the slightest interest in owning a Mitsubishi plug-in hybrid. I've seen them, I know they exist, but to me, they are the most boring, disinteresting, underwhelming, average cars. They, in me, evoke no desire whatsoever. And I'm not saying that because of anything Mitsubishi said. I've owned Mitsubishis in the past. I've got to admit they weren't too bad. I did have some problems. They had some engine problems, but they weren't too bad. All in all, I had a couple that were good, couple that were lemons. But ultimately, I always liked Mitsubishi. I just think as a brand in general, over the last few years, they've gone to the boredom. They've gone to just complete mediocre. But a lot of people don't mind mediocre for whatever reason. The Japanese brand has only ever sold one EV in Australia, which most people have never heard of, the iMev micro car, which was fairly expensive, and that was sold between 2010 to 2012. So that was 13 years ago when they stopped selling that. Had a very, very short range, very small car. Most people didn't even know it existed. It has since shifted its attention to internal combustion and plug-in hybrids. And they've introduced the Outlander plug-in hybrid in 2017, later the Eclipse Cross plug-in hybrid in 2021. Despite that, Mitsubishi Motors Australia President and CEO Sean Westcott said to the media that Mitsubishi isn't against selling more EVs in Australia, although you can't do that without an EV, and reinforced the Japanese auto brand's plans to introduce one co-developed with Taiwanese firm Foxtron in late 2026. Really, ultimately, that vehicle, if it does come to market, will be a contract manufactured vehicle built by Foxconn. We will bring product. We have no problem in bringing product. We have product and we can demonstrate that. We have multiple alliance partners. We have EVs in other countries, he said. That sounds pretty adamant considering there is no product. Anyway, Mr. Westcott was referring to Mitsubishi's industrial alliance with Nissan and Renault, which has, brought about some other EVs overseas, including the European Eclipse Cross EV, a rebadged Renault Scenic E-Tech, while Mitsubishi has also previewed its own version of the third generation Nissan Leaf. The truth is, Mitsubishi has no electric cars, as in zero of its own. If it wants to sell an EV, it has to rebadge one of its so-called alliance partners' vehicles. But when it's a very loose alliance, and that's why Nissan is going down, right? Mitsubishi and Renault are looking at Nissan saying, you can sync, we're not going to sync with you. So it's not really the kind of partnership where you'd say they're tied together in some meaningful way. They just sort of do things for each other from time to time, have agreements on things. Mr. Westcott pointed out that several of Mitsubishi's rival brands in Australia have introduced EVs to lukewarm reception. And he suggested that cooling demand for EVs is not just due to the lack of EV chargers, but the fact that battery electric vehicles still rely largely on coal-fired power in most Australian states. However, in the first quarter of 2025, renewable energy accounted for 43% of all electricity on the Australian grid. In the second quarter of 2025, it accounted for nearly 50%. And in addition to that, 4 million Australian households have solar panels. In addition to that, 1,000 batteries are being installed in Australian homes every single day. It's anticipated that 1 million households will have installed batteries between now and 2030. It's also anticipated that probably hundreds of thousands of car owners will own electric cars that they'll plug into the grid over the next few years, helping the grid to become renewable. This idea from Mitsubishi saying that actually EVs are polluting, they're bad because they just run on coal, it's not actually true. Most EV owners, not all of them, but most of them have solar panels already. Yeah. In addition to that, electric cars are actually 73% greener based on a study that emerged last week. And in fact, plug-in hybrids, which Mitsubishi manufacture, are the most polluting cars in the world by a significant margin. In fact, they are 20% worse on average than gasoline-powered cars. That's according to the biggest study in Europe that was conducted over the past 12 months and involved millions of data points, apparently. Mitsubishi went on to say, as we sit here today, we have competitors in market who have EVs in their brand that I can tell you as a fact are sitting in their showroom and they've been sitting there for months and they can't even sell them, he said. These companies have to discount those costs below the cost of production just to get them to move out of the showroom. That is not sustainable. Does this sound like a company that's going to be around to you in 10 years? So despite all the political commentary around it, he went on to say, it's not the lack of EVs that's causing the problem. It's the lack of investment by government in the infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, this is not just about chargers. There's a gap between the chargers and the source of energy. There's a gap between the chargers and the source of energy. I'm confused. Normally a charger is connected to electricity, the source of energy. Anyway, Mr. Westcott said the vast majority of electricity in Australian states like New South Wales is still generated by coal. Then you add gas and other fossil fuels on top of that, you get to about 90%. And you have zero tailpipe emissions. But all you're doing is you're polluting in Lithgow, a major electricity production region. Well, mate, the wind blows from Lithgow to Sydney as well, he said. All you've done is shift the emissions from the tailpipe to the power station. Now, as I mentioned before, most EV owners have solar panels. And actually, renewable energy is skyrocketing in Australia. By 2030, about 80 to 90% of electricity generated in Australia will be fully electric. And that's not hyperbole, that's actual based on numbers and forecasts. Anyhow, Mr. Westcott continued by saying an additional challenge was transporting electricity produced via renewable methods like solar or wind, another area in which he said infrastructure investment and planning have been a failure. Getting the energy from there to where the car is, to where the charger is, requires significant, and I'm talking billions of dollars, investment in infrastructure. But I haven't seen any plans for that yet, he said. And I know there are some plans, but I'm seeing challenges in getting that turned into reality. Hang on a minute. Westcott, you said, I haven't seen any plans for that yet. Literally 2 seconds later, and I know there are some plans, but I'm seeing challenges in getting that turned into reality. This guy's drunk. Honestly, he's drunk or he's high. So there's a gap between where we are today, practically speaking, the reality and the ambition. Just contradicting himself. Weird. There are current plans to modernise Australia's electricity grid. It is happening, as evidenced by the National Renewable Energy Priority List. For example, the list outlines 56 priority projects which are going to provide an additional 16 gigawatts of electricity generation. Though this is yet to be fully approved through all levels of government, but the truth is that right now, as we speak, Australia is on track to install 18 gigawatt hours of renewable energy simply through the battery rebate, which is happening right at this point in time, as you watch this video, not in the future, not yet to be approved. It has been approved. Australia is on track to add 16 gigawatt hours of electricity. That would make up 40% of Australia's current energy production simply coming from home batteries. So actually, Australia is on the right track, even though it would appear we're not. Mr. Westcott says these factors are why Mitsubishi is pushing phev, a powertrain type that he says has the mechanical capability to support the driving habits of Australians. That's despite 25,000 plug-in hybrids having been sold in the first 6 months of 2025, compared to 47,000 electric cars. So basically, Mitsubishi is saying there's no demand for EVs because of the Australian government and because of coal, even though twice as many electric cars are being sold in Australia than plug-in hybrids. Not a lot of data was used in the making of this discussion, I'd say. Here we go. He went on to say, we have access to our customers' information on that. They drive their car in pure EV mode 83% of the time. For most people's daily commute, 30 kilometers on average, the plug-in hybrid battery covers that. Our range exceeds that, he said. I can travel for 2 or 3 days without charging my car. I've got solar at work. I have solar at home. I have zero emissions. In my case, 93% of the time, right here today with no infrastructure. So he's saying he could own an EV then, basically. But the plug-in hybrid is better, even though he has solar at work, solar at home, and zero emissions. Anyway, on the topic of the fringe benefits tax, I think that not extending the FBT exemption on plug-in hybrids was a major problem, a major mistake, because we could reduce emissions dramatically right here today just by promoting PHEVs and taking away all that range anxiety and all those other concerns of EVs. Now, as I mentioned earlier, plug-in hybrids pollute far more than internal combustion cars. In fact, they're 20% worse. That's taken from data from millions of owners in Europe, millions of owners. So recent information said that EVs are 73% cleaner than internal combustion engine cars. 73%. Even if the grid is coal-based, even if it is, even though Australia's grid is now 50% renewables, even if it was 100% coal-based, EVs would be 73% cleaner on average. That figure then goes up if you have solar to approximately 90% cleaner. Plug-in hybrids, according to the European Union, are 20% worse than internal combustion. 20% worse. And the key reason why, most people who own a plug-in hybrid, they don't really get their head around the charging thing. So they don't charge it because they don't actually need to. You can just drive it on internal combustion. In other words, most of the time they actually drag their battery around. This sounds insane, right? If you're watching this video thinking, I would never do that. No way people are doing that. That's idiocy. But actually the data proves that they are. Mitsubishi's data it's nonsense. They have no proof. 93% of the time people drive their plug-in hybrids on battery or power alone. They have no way of knowing that. Unless, what are they doing? Secretly taking data from your car that you're not aware of. Have you authorized that? Have owners of Mitsubishis in Australia authorized that? Or does Mitsubishi even really have the ability to get that data from your personal car? I highly, highly doubt it. The European Union, though, actually has data on millions of these cars. And the truth is, owners aren't using them as plug-in hybrids most of the time. Thanks for watching.